Hey everyone, this is Finn. In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you some simple movement methods, starting with a rolling ball. Let's press New to create a new 3D Unity project, and I am going to rename it Roller Ball. This is a standard Unity exercise for learning how movement works. Alright, our first step is to create a floor. I've shown you how to do this multiple times, so I'm not going to go over it in depth. But let's right click, create a 3D object that is a cube. You want to change its y-axis of position to -1. Its x-axis for scale I want to change to 20. And I'm going to change the z-axis for scale to 20 as well. Now we have a floor. I'm going to click my cube object and rename it floor in the inspector. And now I am going to right click and add a sphere. And that is going to be our ball. I'm going to rename it ball. And I'm going to make sure that it is not inside of the ground here. I'm going to save my scene, and then I'm going to add a rigid body to this ball by going to the inspector and clicking Add Component, typing in rigid body, and then selecting the rigid body component. Now we have the ability to use gravity. Now I'm going to change the color of my floor by adding a simple material. Right-click in your project files area, right here in this empty space, press Create, and then Material. Then name your new material, Floor. I am going to click and drag that floor material to the floor game object, or to where it says floor in our hierarchy, the floor game object right here. And then I'm going to select my floor game object and look in the inspector to verify that yes, it says down here, floor, where my default material used to be. Let's select our floor material and change the albedo property by clicking this white box next to an eyedropper tool. It's going to bring up a color picker window. We are going to change it to a dark green. Now I'm going to create material for my ball by right-clicking in this same place, going to Create, and then Material once again. And now I'm going to name that Ball. I'm going to attach it to the ball game object in my hierarchy, and then change its albedo to a purple. Now that we have our scene set up, we can add a script to our ball. I'm going to select Ball, go down to Add Component, click that button, and then I'm going to type Roller Ball Controller. Click New Script, and then Create and Add. And that's going to add the Roller Ball Controller script to this object. Let's go ahead and edit our script by clicking these three dots to the top right of the component, and then selecting Edit Script. Now we're going to want to start by adding two variables to our public class. Click this starting squiggly bracket and press Enter to add a line above both of your functions, but inside of the public class. Now type public float, and we're going to name that speed, and end that with a semicolon. That's going to be a variable that is a number. We are going to be able to adjust it in the inspector. That's why we have it set as public. Under that, we are going to create a private variable It's going to be of the data type rigid body, so type rigid body. We are not going to be setting this in the inspector. I'm going to show you how to set this variable through code. And now we are going to name this rigid body component RB and add a semicolon. In the start method, to store our rigid body in our RB variable, we are going to want to type RB equals get component, which is a function that grabs whatever component from the inspector attached to this object so that we can reference it in our code. And then inside of these two angled brackets, you want to type rigid body, just like that. Outside of the angled brackets, you want to type a opening and closing parenthesis, because this get component is a method, and that always follows with a set of parentheses. Let's press the semicolon to end that. Now RB is connected to the component rigid body for this object, and since our script is connected to our ball, and we have a rigid body connected to the ball as well, it automatically will know once the script is active, to store our rigid body in the RB variable. Now we're going to add a fixed update function. Under the update, type void fixed update. The reason why we are using a fixed update function instead of our update function is because this fixed update function is where we want to put all of our physics changes, including movement. Inside of our fixed update method, we want to add two variables. They are both going to be floats, so type float. Move horizontal will be our first one, and this is going to equal input dot get axis, which is going to be fed a string inside of these two parentheses, and we are going to type horizontal inside of there because Unity has a built-in input editor, and it has a bunch of different axes that are representative of different keys and different buttons. Horizontal represents the WASD keys as well as the arrow keys that are going side to side or left to right. Like vertical is going up and down. So this is our x-axis. Go ahead and put a semicolon at the end of that. And then our next line is for our z-axis. And we are going to type float move vertical equals input dot get axis, and in parentheses vertical, and end that with a semicolon. Now we're going to be creating a vector3 variable. I'm going to type capital V vector3. That declares a vector3 variable, and now we're going to name it movement. And that is going to equal a new vector3. New vector3. Now let's open and close parentheses because we are going to add coordinates. As we talked about before, a vector3 always has coordinates. In the x-axis, we are going to type move horizontal. We're going to type 0 for the y-axis because we are not going to be moving from the y-axis. We are just a ball rolling around on the ground. Now type move vertical and put a semicolon at the end of that line. Now, to actually create the movement, we have to add force to our rigid body. To do that, we are going to reference our rigid body by typing RB dot add force. That is a method, so we need to put the parentheses and a semicolon. And inside of the add force method parentheses, we need movement times or multiplied by, which is the asterisk symbol that shares the 8 key on your keyboard. There's also one on your number pad, if you have one, and then speed. So movement times speed. Let's press Control S to save and go back to our project. It's going to take a moment and load our new script. Next, we need to make sure that we are putting a value for our speed. I'm going to put 25 to start out with. Press Control S to save my scene, and let's press play. As you can see, I can move my ball around. Oop, and I fell off the map. Right now it is a little hard for me to control it because I keep looking up here when I should be looking down here. Yes, if I look down there, it is much easier to control because that is actually the view. Oop, I fell right off. I'm going to create a fun little ramp for myself. Let's click on our floor object and press Control D to duplicate that. And now we are going to rotate it this way. And then move it down. Let's zoom in, hold Alt and left click and drag to change our view. There we go. Just gonna make sure it is there. I am going to duplicate that floor again by pressing Control D, moving it down, rotating it, and now I'm actually going to scale it down by the Z axis, and let's make that a tiny little launching pad, not launching pad, but launching point. Just to add a little bit more fun. And now I'm going to move my camera. To do that, I'm going to make sure my camera is selected. Raise my green arrow to pull it up, and then I'm going to select my rotate tool and tilt it by the x-axis so that we're looking this way. And then I'm going to save my scene. Then I'm just going to play around, roll around for a little bit. Here I am using my WASD keys. And then here I am using my arrow keys. So with that horizontal and vertical to represent the X and Z axes, we are able to find that kind of input with no problem. Oop, I fell off. I am going to actually go down the ramp before we end this section. Go. Oop. And I launched myself right off of the map because my gravity is not comparable to real life gravity right now. I'll go a little slower. I'll just kind of nudge my ball off of the edge. Or maybe I have too much add force. That might be something as well. I'm gonna go back. I can actually climb the ramp. There we go. That kind of worked. We can see the ball flying in the distance in the game view. That was funny. And that's how you create a rolling ball. Now I'm going to create a new scene. Let's double click on the scenes folder. I'm going to actually duplicate this scene to create my scene this time. I want to press Control D, click on the one that you had just created, sample scene 1, it's going to add a 1 and with the name of the one that you duplicated. I'm going to click again and it's going to highlight that to rename. I'm going to name that third person movement. Double click on that scene. Make sure that you save your previous one first. And I'm actually going to delete all of the game objects except for the floor. I'm also going to drag my main camera just a little bit. There we go. Now it's more in the center. I'm going to press Ctrl S to save my scene. Now I'm going to create a character-like shape to represent a third-person character. Let's right-click on our hierarchy, go to 3D Object, and go to Cube. I'm going to move my cube's position to 0, 0, 0, and double-click on it in the hierarchy so I can see it. I'm going to rename it Player. And then I am going to go over here to my Rect tool, and I'm going to click the top seam of the little box that appears. I'm going to drag my box up to be a little more person-sized, like a better person height. I'm going to move my directional light up by selecting the Move tool. Now we need to create a script for our third-person controller, and we need to attach it to our third-person character. So make sure your player cube is selected. Click Add Component, and we are going to type character movement third. I'm going to press New Script and create an add. Then I am going to wait for that to load. Click these three dots at the top right of the character movement third script component and press Edit Script. The first thing we are going to add is under our public class. It is a variable. We are going to, like the other script, add a variable for speed. Public float speed. Next, we are going to create another function underneath update. I am going to type void box controller, opening and closing parentheses, and opening and closing squiggly brackets. Again, we want to create variables that will store our horizontal and vertical axes. We will start with the horizontal axis. Float move horizontal equals input dot get axis, and in parentheses and in quotation marks we want to type horizontal, add a semicolon, and then our next line is for our z-axis, float move vertical input dot get axis vertical. Now we are going to create a vector3 variable called movement once again, and that is going to equal a new vector3 and inside of the x-axis we are going to put move horizontal 0, move vertical, and then we are going to multiply that by our speed variable and also multiply that by a built-in system for time and physics in Unity called time.deltaTime. Add a semicolon. Next, we are going to press Enter to move down a couple lines, and we are going to type transform dot translate opening parentheses, and we are going to put in our movement vector 3, comma, and then type space dot self. Add a semicolon at the end. Now we just need to make sure that our box controller method is being called from update. Actually, we are going to create a fixed update. And now go ahead and type box controller with your parentheses and semicolon, and then press Ctrl S to save your script before returning to your project. We have to remember that our speed is set to 0, so if we press play right now, we aren't going to move at all. Let's go ahead and change that to 10. Press Ctrl S to save your scene, and then press the play button to test your scene. As you see, I have this fun guy here, and he gets to just move simply around this little map that I've created, this little green square. This has been our tutorial on simple movement. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.